Welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa Alastuey, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. So if that sounds good to you and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. My guest today is Kirsten Pursell, and she is the author of Long Enough to Love You. I will be linking her website and her Instagram down in the description box for your reference. Welcome, Kirsten.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
For sure, for sure. So would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background?
I always find this one the hardest question to answer. I say that I'm on version 3.0 of myself.
Nice.
And that's the version of me at 55 years old that gets to be whatever I want it to be, right? 1.0 was corporate me, the go-getter, hungry for my career and prove myself in the world. 2.0 was the mom me that walked away from that corporate life to raise my three amazing, now very grown-up children. And this 3.0 version is the version of me that gets to be whatever I want it to be. So right now she's an author, which has always been my passion and something that I've loved doing, but I never really was able to focus on until the empty nest came. And that's where I really found myself in a position to say, I can be whatever I want to be. 3.0 is constantly evolving, but right now I'm wearing the label author. So
Awesome.
That's where I am now.
Awesome, awesome. So you wrote a book, and would you mind just telling us a little bit about the impetus? It's a big project to take on a book, and so not everybody does that. So why did you write this book, and where was your inspiration?
So it's really funny. This is actually the fourth book I've written. I wrote two just kind of when my kids were younger, just for fun, to say that I did and to prove that I could still intellectually do things. And I had for years been resonating and thinking about wanting to tell a story of a woman in midlife, contemplating her place in midlife through a marriage, through raising kids. And then when I started to write this story, I stumbled upon my own diaries and journals. And I was like, oh, I think I need to tell this story first. So I ended up writing my memoir. And through the writing of the memoir, I was constantly thinking about this book. And I was dealing with like who I was when I was younger to who I evolved to now. And I was finding myself going, God, I miss parts and pieces of that person that I was when I was younger. And it also gave me a secondary part of the story that I wasn't sure that I had when I originally came up with the concept for it. And that is, how does she reconcile, and what's the great event that really triggers her to question her marriage and question her life and to move forward? So I was able to borrow parts from my own diaries and incorporate kind of the thoughts and feelings from that into this book as well. So basically, it's a woman's story of discovery of who she's supposed to be in her 50s.
Awesome, awesome. So some of it is somewhat modeled after you, but it's still a fictional character.
Jen is, yes, very fictional. But I think honestly, a book like this, you don't write without experiencing many, if not most, of the feelings and emotions that she went through. So I mean, yes, it would be very fair to say that the character of Jen is very much a fictional, emotional representation of kind of what I went through and what I've gone through in the last several years of my life.
Okay, so would you mind sharing with the audience just kind of briefly what the book is or the story is about?
Yes, absolutely. So the story Long Enough to Love You is about Jen, who is a 50-something-year-old woman who's been married to the same man for almost 30 years. And she feels lost and not seen in that marriage because for so long she assumed the role of mom and caretaker, and she gave up the parts of herself that defined her before she had children. And she did it willingly and lovingly, and she loved raising her children. But all of a sudden, when her kids are gone and she comes home, she hears silence. She sits at a table with her husband and all she hears is him chewing. It's like all the things that you know from years of being with the same person, all of a sudden those little idiosyncrasies start to grate on you because they're louder, even though the silence is greater. And she starts getting inside her head about, I'm allowed to be happy. And is this my happy? And she equates herself to a donut, right? The world sees this woman that on the outside is perfect and she's whole and they're like, your life is amazing. You have everything you want. You have a successful husband. You have children that are successful. But on the inside, she feels like the donut, the hole is missing. So she's incomplete. And she's at the point where I'm 55 years old and I still have a lot of years of living left. And am I gonna be okay not feeling whole in this marriage? So she goes through the process of really dissecting fairly her marriage. She's thrown some curveballs in the beginning where one of her parents passes away, and she learns things about her parents and their marriage. And she digests that information and takes that into account too, as she's trying to figure out what role their relationship had in her relationship. And did she settle for safe? Because that's something I think so many of us are like, let's go the safe route, right? Because safe is simple and safe is easy. And we should all want something that's safe. But I think inside Jen, through the course of rediscovering her journals and the story, she had forgotten about her first love, or at least the impact and the emotions and the depth of feelings that she had for that first love. And she's taken back to that point in time and remembers that. But then she reconnects with him, somebody she hadn't thought out or looked for. And they began conversations. And in the course of them reconnecting, they crossed some lines. And that maybe a lot of people would or wouldn't do. And I think that's what makes the book kind of interesting, is the discussion that you have about at what point is it crossing the line? At what point is it infidelity? But it throws a wrench in her own struggles, because she's reminded of this woman who she was in conflict with the woman she is, and she still thinks that she can be in the future. So she's very fair to the process in the book of trying in her marriage to Mark to find a way to make it work, to ask him for things that she needs. And I think more than anything, it's the realization that asking him for things is out of his comfort zone. And he doesn't know how to give her those things. She's finally in a place to articulate, here's what I need. Here's what I want. I've given you all of me for all these years, and everyone has gotten all of me. The only person who hasn't gotten me is me. So I think she's like, this is what I need from you. And he tries, but he's just not capable of that. And I think in her search for herself, she's like, I think I was so comfortable with safe because I was living this kind of like crazy, busy, go life. And it was uncertain and it was unpredictable. And yeah, it was kind of fun, but it wasn't a good family kind of situation. So I think for her, she goes through the whole situation and she kind of comes to her conclusion in the end that and not to give away the book, but she gets to her place that she needs to be. And she does it on her own, but she's super fair to the process.
Oh my gosh, this story resonates with so many women in midlife. I just met you, but I've heard this story before. I've seen this story before played out. And so I think that you putting it on paper and talking about it is what we need, because nobody should be having these conversations alone or go through these things alone. And I think it's great that you're putting this out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's what I've really discovered in talking to people. It's like, I'm not unique. Oh, you feel this too. And it's kind of this whole thing. It's like so many of us, people that I know, have come up to me and gone, oh my God, this is my story. Maybe not the trip part. And, that's not my story either. That was a nice little piece to imagine and add to conflict her feelings in this story. But so much of it is like, I've heard people say, I reconnected with my first love in my 60s. There's so many people where the parts and pieces of this story make a whole for a lot of women. And I think what I hopefully have been able to effectively do is put an emotional voice to a woman in her 50s struggling to find her place. I'm not imagining it. I've been there. I've been that woman. And I'd like to think that I did it eloquently enough that people are pulled in. And what I hear is like, oh my God, I had to stop. And I had to think about what you just wrote, because those are my words. I just didn't know how to articulate them or put them out there. And I don't think it's a process or a thought of being brave to tell a story like this, because I think it's so real. We just aren't represented in literature in a way that makes us real. We're frumpy 50 somethings that don't have sexuality and aren't beautiful, and we're awkward, and we're supposed to be just okay with who we are. And I think that Jen challenges that assumption on every level. And I think that really resonates with people.
Awesome. Awesome. So your book, what do you hope people, when they close the last page, what do you hope people take away from it?
I hope that they take away that we are allowed to want, we are allowed to ask. We don't have to say, this is what it's supposed to be in midlife, and I'm supposed to be okay with this for the rest of my life. And we don't have to settle on the status quo. I think the takeaway is it's all right to question, and it's all right to have these conversations, and that you're not alone. But I do think there are people out there that are like, I've been married to this man for so long, and he's good to me, and I'm okay, and I find other outlets, and I shouldn't have to look at him for my happily ever after, that there's other ways to do it. And I think that's okay too, if that's your position in life. But I think ultimately we need to be allowed to question things and not just accept them as truth or facts.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think that, our Generation X is being a little bit more bold than maybe our mothers and grandmothers that just stayed in an unhappy marriage, or that just stayed for the safety. Like that was the value that they placed above anything else. And so I'm very proud of our generation for, taking on the, taking on these types of topics.
Oh, 100% agree. And in the book, I talk about that there were hidden secrets that the mom had, and the dad is okay with them because he had his own secrets. But I think that's how our parents dealt with things. Like when I talk to my own mom, she's like, I don't understand how you're not just happy and okay with this amazing life you have. And I'm like, I am happy and okay, but there's more. And I got a lot of years left of living to say that I'm going to be complacent and I'm just going to accept it. So I'm not okay with the narrative that at 55 years old, I'm supposed to be good for the rest of my life and not challenge myself and challenge the status quo and challenge who I can be as a person and where I fit in my own relationship and relationships with others. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're lucky, and we're kind of getting to break the barriers, I think, of making it okay to talk about this stuff and to be those women.
Yes. Midlife is an interesting time, and I see a lot of women evolving. We go through lots of changes in life. I think women go through a lot more changes than men, especially like with menopause and so on. So we somewhat are forced to look at some of these issues head on and to evolve. And then because we're evolving, we want the people around us to evolve too. And that sometimes can be tough because, women change and men don't want their women to change. And it becomes like this, conflict.
Yes, absolutely. I think so. And I think men can be very closed off to that idea of women changing. In fact, I was talking to a really good friend of mine who's a man, and he was like, I was getting angry reading your book. And I'm like, why are you getting angry? And he's all
triggered.
Yeah, he's like, she needs to just stop being in her head. And I go, but that's what we do. We have conversations with ourselves. We challenge things. We don't just like ride through life going la-di-da. It's great. Like my life is perfect on the outside, because we have parts of us that need to be filled. And that it's not like you can fill it once and it's going to be full. It's like a gas tank, right? Then we start to run on empty and we need to fill it up again. And it might be with something different. And I think that's the part of us that is amazing, is that we get to constantly keep figuring out what that is. We don't need to be stuck in this is who I am and I need to wear frumpy clothes and I can't look sexy, because I think we can. And I think we can be beautiful at this age. And I think that I actually look better in my 50s than I did in my 30s or 40s or maybe even my 20s. I think it's just, I'm so much more comfortable in my skin now. And I think that's the beauty of aging, is that we've gotten to a point where we accept who we are, and challenging who we are inside emotionally is kind of our new place. Mm-hmm. And to say that I don't need to be okay with what it is all the time. And I don't always, and I can seek out more and I can want more and I can ask for more. And men can try and deliver, or they can stick their head in the sand and run and hide. And, you know, I think so many men want to run and hide. And that's unfortunate, right? Because honestly, I think we're all worth fighting for.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, I'm not a man, I'm not speaking for men, but I think it can be overwhelming when a woman finally finds her voice and they're like, who is this? And they feel like, I don't know you anymore. And it's just that, you know, as a woman evolves and grows and steps into her power and sees her value and stops seeking external validation and work and all these other things that maybe they did when they were younger, it can be intimidating sometimes for men, you know, for women in their mid-age.
Oh, absolutely. But I like that we have that power, right?
Yeah.
That we can make them feel
Yeah.
we can make them look inside themselves. And I like to think that by doing that, we're helping to make them be better people.
Yep. And that's it. That's it. A man who is not threatened or intimidated by that and actually, you know, celebrates a woman stepping into her power. That's, you know, that's the type of man that I would have, you know, there's mutual respect there going on.
Absolutely. Yes. And the man who doesn't run away and faces his flaws. I mean, on a really personal note, my husband had to read this book. I'm like, you need to see yourself in here, because me talking to you and me asking you to be this person isn't working. You're like good for a day. You're good for 2 days. And then you like fall back in. And I think for him, like in so many ways, to me, this book saved my marriage. And because it required him to go in and uncover truths about himself that made him uncomfortable. And, you know, it's not all about him, obviously. These are fictional characters, but again, they're predicated on very real emotions and very real thoughts. And he definitely saw himself in those pages. And I think that was hard for him, but I think it was the reality check he needed to come back to me and say, okay, I'm hearing you. And I'm like, God, finally you're hearing me, because I've been asking for years, been asking for you to see me as more than just the mother of your children. I am more than that, and I need you to give me that. So it's been great. And you know, the funny thing is that I've talked to a couple bookstagrammers, and they're young, bookstagrammers are, and I've actually heard one of them say to me, I think your book is saving my marriage. And I'm like, wow, you're like new in the marriage picture and it's saving your marriage. And she's like, it's making me reflect on things that I need and I want that I'm not getting. And it's helping me to ask those questions. I didn't know how to articulate it until I saw me in those pages. So I think it's valid for men and for women to see themselves in those pages and to say, it's okay, I can ask for that.
That is so cool. Like, if your book is a tool, and if women are watching this and they're like going to couples therapy and they're not getting anywhere, or if they've had these conversations and they're not getting heard, maybe, you know, you could start with the book and just say, honey, maybe just read this book and let's discuss, and just be, you know, as a tool, as a wake-up call that maybe other avenues aren't working.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I didn't think I knew anyone that was divorced until I was considering it myself. And then all of a sudden, everyone you know is like, oh, I know somebody, or wait, that happened to me. And one of my friends who went through a divorce and is dating a divorced man now, she made him read the book. And she's like, he read it faster than I did. And his takeaway was, I didn't know women thought these things. I didn't know women felt these things. And he is a divorced man in his 50s and a super successful man. And she's like, God, it's like, it was like a wake-up call for him too. It's like, to understand a lot of the emotions that women go through, because I think men think we're just these emotional tools, right? Like, we can't control our emotions. We're out of control. We're irrational, wanting to feel things, and we're not. And I don't think I'm unique. I think the book speaks to so many women because it's finally a voice on paper that says, this is what we're feeling. And thank you for being that voice through a fictional character I can relate to.
Yes, yes. I love your book that it really tackles lots of different issues, including, you know, societal norms and midlife stereotypes. So let's talk about that a little bit.
The midlife stereotypes. God, this one is just, it blows me away. And really where this became kind of pronounced for me was when I wrote my memoir, I did a photo shoot. for the book. I've never done anything like that. I wrote a blog about this, and the blog was really about, for so long, I was always the photographer. I was never in pictures. If I was in a picture, I was a prop. Like, my kids were my prop. It was never me in front of the camera. I don't know if I was insecure. I didn't like who I was at that point. But I never, like, I can go back and look at 25 years of pictures, and I'm rarely alone in a picture because no one took pictures of me. I'm the photographer. No one thought to. So I do this photo shoot, and I'm wearing makeup, which I don't do. I don't know how to do makeup well. And I get my hair done, and I'm wearing pretty clothes. And I got in front of that camera, and I'm like, wow, this is so fun. And the response was amazing. And people are like, are you modeling? I'm like, ha ha ha, good one. And they're like, no, you should be modeling. I'm like, no. And if you read my memoir, you would know that I struggled with so many issues about the reflection in the mirror was not what I was what I saw was not what reflected to the rest of the world. I had body dysmorphia as an athlete. I mean, I went through so many different personal issues with my own appearance. So for people to be saying this stuff to me, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be that inspiration. All of a sudden, people are like, wow, you inspire me. You're doing this, you're doing that. And one of my friends was like, have you ever thought about being a fitness model or a swimsuit model? And I'm like, no. But you know what? If I don't put myself out there, what kind of example am I going to be to my own daughters, to other women that look at me as someone who's not afraid to take a chance? So I did this swimsuit photo shoot because everyone's like, oh, you're like such a great representation. That was like the scariest thing I've ever done. I've been a swimmer my entire life. Wearing bathing suits is something I do, but being photographed is not. So I get out there and I do this. But you know what the reaction was? You don't represent the average woman in her 50s. And I'm like, that's really interesting because I am the average woman in her 50s. But I wasn't gray enough, and I wasn't wrinkled enough, or I was too fit, and it's like, I'm like, this is so bizarre because all of a sudden I'm like, I am your stereotypical woman, but I'm not, because all of a sudden I'm embracing sexy. I'm wearing 2-piece bathing suits. I am putting on clothes I haven't put on in so long. So I'm trying to defy the stereotype, and I'm being told that I'm not the stereotype, right? Which is kind of funny because I'm supposed to be frumpy and I don't know, it's so weird. So I'm like, there's such a contradiction, I think, on who we're supposed to be in our 50s. It's like, yeah, we want to be sexy and we want to be beautiful. And I really am trying to embrace that version of me because I think we're still sexual human beings in our 50s. And we still want to be seen as attractive. And I know that sounds crazy because I think I validate myself, but I also, I like when someone gives me a compliment. And I don't know, maybe that's not the way I'm supposed to be going at this age, but I still think that we need to be seen and we want to be seen and we want to be heard. And I don't like the stereotype that says you have to stop being sexy in your 50s. I want to be seen as a go-getter. I want to be seen as someone who's inspirational, regardless. I want to personify a woman aging gracefully or ungracefully or, naturally, organically. I don't know, whatever the correct term is, but, to be that woman and defy the stereotypes. I think that's super important.
Yes. I know, for many generations, women felt invisible and anonymous. And I think we're now saying, wait a minute, we're not going to be invisible anymore. And we're not going to be anonymous anymore. And women are starting to speak up, and I love that they are, so what if you don't think it's beautiful? Somebody else will think it's beautiful. So beauty's in the eye of the beholder. We have to keep that in mind. I think a lot of times people put too much emphasis on the youth, and that's great when you're young, but there's also beauty at every age.
Oh God, absolutely. I think like Paulina Porskova.
Love her.
Like, she's my inspiration. I loved her when, we're only a couple of years apart in age. I loved her when she was on the front covers of Sports Illustrated. I thought she was like the most beautiful woman in the world then. And I think she's still one of the most beautiful women in the world. And she's aging, she's a spokesperson for our generation and saying, we are allowed to be older and we're still allowed to be beautiful and seen as beautiful. And we're still allowed to be these sexual people and stop not seeing us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the character of Jen too. She's like, you need to see me
Mm-hmm.
and all my parts and pieces. I'm not just a shell, I'm whole. And I have so much more to give the world than I gave the world. And I think that's where we're finally being able to have a voice. It's like, I'm not just my children's mother, I am my own person. And, or I'm not just defined by my career, I am me. And I think we're complicated human beings. I think that's what makes us so fascinating. And now in our 50s, God, we've lived and we've learned and we have so much that we still can give. That's, I think, so much more valuable than the shell that is our exterior and whatever we look like. And I think you're so right that I think today it's so much more accepted to be different looking and the different body types. And I love that formula of being whatever is beautiful. And I see that on my own daughters. We're all three so different as women, and I love it.
Yep. The only way things are going to change is that, people start making the changes. Otherwise, we'll just keep getting more of what has been. And, going back to Paulina, I love her Instagram because she triggers people. She really is eloquent and articulate in what she has to say about aging. And, she mentions, people used to give me tons and tons of money to take my clothes off. Now that I'm over 50, people are telling me, Grandma, why are you wearing the bikini? Put some clothes on. And she's defying that because she's pushing back on that narrative of you need to be invisible, you need to go away, you need to be quiet. Your opinion doesn't matter anymore now that you're over 50. And I love that she doesn't back down. She's stepping into her wisdom and really, voicing and going after, head to head with some of these people that, attack her.
Haters are going to hate. And that's what just kills me. Like, I will post pictures on my social media of me in a bathing suit, and I do it as an inspiration. And I have to say, I don't have millions of followers like Paulina does. I have a few hundred. So I don't get hate, which I think is great. I get that you're an inspiration, but I think when you're a public figure like she is, people think they're invited to critique you and to put you down. And I don't understand that part of it. I mean, there's nothing, like, every part of her is absolutely stunning and beautiful. And I don't look like that when I take my clothes off. My body has a mind of its own. And but it's still like, I don't understand that. So I follow her too on Instagram, and I'm like, you inspire. Like, you really are somebody who has a platform to tell women that it's okay to age. It's good to age. And she is so articulate. Yeah.
I think she takes that hate and that criticism and uses it for fuel. And that is a good lesson to learn. Instead of taking your opinions don't really matter to me, I'm going to take this energy and this fuel and keep putting forth what I need to put forth. That's kind of what I've seen her do. And I think that's a good message for other women. If you are getting criticized or put down for the, getting older and the gray hair and the wrinkles and, put your clothes on, Grandma, and all that different type of stuff. You just have to take that hate and use it as fuel.
I think too, as an author, right? I know that I'm never going to write something that appeals to everyone. There are going to be people that give my book a 1 or 2 star, and they might even write about not liking it. And it's so hard not to fixate on that negative. That 1 or 2 people that say this isn't great, but the 50 or 100 that say it's amazing. It's really hard because we get caught up in the why don't I appeal to everyone cycle of things. And I think she does that great. And obviously she is on a platform as a social, a larger than life figure that people feel like an invitation to critique. And I think even as an author, people feel an invitation to critique. And for me personally, when something like that happens, I think it's human nature to want to know what people think and are going to say about you. I go in and I find my favorite authors and I go look at their 1 and 2 star reviews because every single one of them has them. And it just reminds me that we are never going to appeal and appease everyone. that there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like your message, or who doesn't agree with your message, or doesn't agree with the execution, or that you decided to be a voice and you put yourself out there. They're always going to hate. But I like to think for the larger whole, like with someone like a Paulina Porskova, she's making a positive impact on women our age, and she's telling us it's okay and we don't all need to look like her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's impossible for that to happen. Otherwise, we would have all been super mega star, supermodels. But the reality is, it's okay for us to be to like who we are, and embrace and accept who we are.
Yes, yes. And so, kind of touching on the aging and beauty standards and so forth, she is a great example because she's embracing the gray hair. I don't believe she's had any plastic surgery. Now, granted, she's a model and she has a good template to begin with, but I think for this generation, you have women, those that can afford it and want to go that route. That's great. And if it makes you feel better. And then others are like, you know what, let's see what natural aging looks like. I'm going to keep these crow's feet around my eyes. They represent laugh lines and smile lines, and they're beautiful to me. So, I mean, we're now trying to look at how, there's choices and you can make that, and we should honor those women. And there's also, hey, there's nothing wrong with the aging process.
It's natural, right? It's the way.
It's not a disease.
Right? I think that is so true. It isn't a disease. It's a normal thing. And I will admit to having tried those products and having used them, I had these tiny little eyes, and my eyes I hated were just disappearing. And I'm like, what can I do? And you know what? You can do a couple little Botox things. I will admit that I've done that to lift my eyes because otherwise I couldn't see. And I didn't
like hooded eyes.
Mm-hmm. I didn't want to do like any surgery because that scares the crap out of me, because I think that women start to look the same when they get cosmetic surgery. I'm like, why do you look that way? I think there are some women our age that have had plastic surgery done, and I think, why did you do that? You were so
Madonna
before. Embrace it, age, and grow old. So I will admit to having used Botox, partly for not just for cosmetics, but because I couldn't see anyway more, because my eyes are so tiny and it became heavy. And I'm okay with people doing those kinds of things. I think whatever helps people feel a little bit better in their skin, and to maybe ease some of the dramatic aging that happens. I'm looking at myself talking to you, and I'm like, God, why are those things there? I hate those like lines. But you know what? I'm not going to stop smiling, and I'm not going to stop living. And but it's funny how we do look, because we all smile in pictures like this now, instead of with that big smile, because we have more wrinkles when we smile at height things. So why are we doing that? Because everyone does it. And it's funny because we're less wrinkled and we're less old when we smile without the big old grin on the face that is who we are, really, right?
We shouldn't shame women for having it, and we shouldn't shame women for not having it. I mean, that's, I think, the bottom line for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about some other midlife issues that women sometimes face. We talk about the midlife crisis. I've had people on here, they say, no, it's a midlife awakening. There's other ways that we can change the narrative on that. But I do think for a lot of women, as they get older and they step into their feminine power, their feminine energy, their feminine sensuality, they start to take more risks that they may not have done when they were 20, 25. And I think that that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Well, I think what happens is we get lost in life from our mid-20s, 30s, whenever it is that we get married, and we step into the role of wife, and then we become mothers, or many of us become mothers, and parts of who we were in our 20s and 30s kind of disappear, and they get lost in who we're supposed to be in all those years. And then for me personally, when the nest emptied, I was like looking in the mirror going, there's no one else around me to be in these pictures, or on the other side of the camera. I'm like, I am running solo now in pictures and photos, and who I want to be. And it is, I don't know if it's necessarily a midlife thing, because I think there's people in their 40s who are empty nesting and kids really young, and now they're in their 40s, and I think they're faced with kind of the same dilemma too. I don't know if it's so much a midlife thing as it is who am I supposed to be when everything else that defines me is no longer there on a daily basis, and my routines change, and all the things that were normal for so long are no longer normal. That to me was like my midlife. I don't even think it was a crisis. It was kind of an awakening of where is this 3.0 version of me going to come from, and how is she going to evolve, and who's she going to be, who she wants to be. Because finally I get to be her again. I get to be that version of me that I haven't been for so long, and I get to redefine it. And I think that to me has been my midlife, is getting to maybe be a little bit selfish for the first time in a really long time. And I think people look at me now and go, well, God, you're being so selfish in this pursuit of writing your book and talking about your book and throwing your marriage out there for the world to see. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not unique. I'm just putting a voice to it. And I am saying things that I know other women are thinking and are living, but don't maybe have a platform to talk about. So I'm grateful when I have an opportunity to be on a platform and to talk and make people realize that it's normal. We're normal. We get to evolve. And I think that's the beauty of this midlife crisis thing, is evolution.
Definitely. And I love your example of how you talk about 2.0, 3.0. It'll be interesting to see what your 4.0 will be. But going back to the selfish thing, that's something I hear quite a bit, where, it's not even other people putting it on you. Women have been programmed to think, am I being selfish? I'm being so selfish. But in reality, you just haven't been putting yourself or making yourself a priority. And that's like, for some women, like, oh, dang, you look back at all the times where you put everybody else above you. And your health suffered, your wants and needs were not met because you were so unselfish. And now it's hitting you. It's like, what about me? What about my time? And that's where people are like, wait, what's happening to you? You're changing. No, you're just waking up.
100%. Yeah. And I think too, I know I was guilty in those years where I would look at some of my friends posting on Facebook, and they're going on these vacations with their friends and they're leaving their kids at home. And I'm like, oh, bad mom, like
mom shaming.
Yeah, no, in my mind, I would never do that. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't go on vacation with friends. Wait, I don't even have friends. And my world is my kids, and I don't get to do that. And I've been an athlete my whole life, and I walked away from competition and everything because I knew I couldn't give it everything I needed to continue to be successful at a level that I was going to be okay with. I was not okay just being mediocre. That's just not me. So I don't do anything half-assed. I'm all in. So I went all into motherhood, which meant I gave up those parts of me because I wanted to be the best mom I could be. But no, I was totally, in my mind, I was totally mom shaming. I'm like, maybe I wasn't so much mom shaming as I was maybe a little envious that I didn't have those kinds of friendships, that I could go to Cabo for a week with a group of friends and just drink drinks on the beach and, talk about life. I didn't have those things. So I think that part I've actually really enjoyed now too, is that I'm making friends and having friendships that I haven't had in so long that are mine. They aren't based on little league friendships or water polo or tennis and always being what my kids were doing, and creating those friendships through their sports, which I appreciated those in those moments. But now they're about my friendships and my people that I want to do things with and hang out with and talk to. So yeah, selfish, but
it's adding. Selfish. But here's the thing, it's adding to your happiness. And that is ultimately, I think, with women in midlife, they are taking inventory and they're like, you know what? This isn't making me happy anymore. Something needs to change or be done, or I'm going to have to do it if not everybody else is going to get on board. But I think that becomes a big common theme for women because life is short and our mortality is short when we hit that midlife point. And so can you touch on like how important like happiness comes to the forefront at this age?
Well, I think like in this book, she sits there and she's standing at the door, and her question she asks at the start of the book is, I've worked for so long to make sure everyone else is happy. What does my happiness look like? That's the impetus of the book. She's standing at the front door about to walk into a conversation with her husband about, I'm not happy in this marriage. And her question to herself is, I'm finally asking myself, what does my happiness look like? And that's huge for us. And to use the donut analogy, how do you fill that 10%? How do you get a jelly filling and make the donut whole? And I think, yes, we're allowed to ask for that from our husbands, and we're allowed to ask for from our mates, or but we can also find that through friendships and going back to the things that we used to love. And for me, that's like being back in a swimming pool and competing again in swimming, and for writing and doing things that I like to do, and volunteering, and doing things that maybe get me out of my comfort zone again too, and realizing that I will survive being out of my comfort zone. And I like doing things that scare me because they make me a better person, and they are taking me on that road to happiness. And I don't know what happiness looks like, but I'm trying to puzzle the pieces together to make it a constant that, I'm not going to, once I think I find happy, I'm not going to be like, oh, okay, this is what it looks like, because I know there's more to it. So it's a constantly evolving thing, which I love, because I think I'm finally to the point where I'm like, I don't need to be 100%, but I can be working towards 100% all the time. And that's going to be my happy.
Yep. I know a lot of people get, like you said, complacent, and they get in their comfort zone, and it's, they're not being challenged by it. And that can make people unhappy, especially like you're an athlete, you like the challenge. And I think for women in middle age, they are looking for getting out of that comfort zone. And, that takes a little bit of risk, that takes maybe in a little bit of suffering, but in a good way, because it's going to make you stronger. And women know that on the other side of that they will come out and be stronger for it, even though it might suck to go through some stuff, but it's necessary and needed.
Absolutely. And I think too, I touch on that so much in this book, is that struggle with being uncomfortable and being okay with challenging the norm. I mean, the character goes through this whole thing of like, things that we didn't have to deal with. Like if someone asked you to take a selfie of yourself without your clothes on, or to do things, those aren't things that we ever dealt with. Like growing up, we talked on the telephone, and she finds herself in a modern era dating scene as she's trying to figure out where she fits. And it makes her uncomfortable because it's new and it's different, but she knows that for her to be on the path to being the woman that she thinks she wants to be, and again, it's a thing, she doesn't know who she wants to be. She's trying to figure all that out in this process of this book. And it's her journey to be there. And she does a lot of things that make her uncomfortable, but she's like, I kind of need to do these things because they're challenging me to be a better woman. And they're challenging me to do things that are out of my comfort zone that I never would have imagined if I were still in my marriage, or if I weren't challenging my place in my marriage. And or if you're not married still in our mid 50s, just to be uncomfortable. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's kind of cool because we're still capable of pushing the bounds of what that looks like, and breaking barriers and doing things that aren't normal by society's standards. I think it's awesome that we can do that.
Yeah, I always say there's magic in the uncomfortable. That's where you find the new things come about. It's never going to be where you're comfortable. It's the same old where you're comfortable. So you've got to like stretch yourself. You got to put yourself out there sometimes.
And if you fail, you fail.
Yeah.
But it makes you stronger.
At least you tried.
Yeah, right. And that's where I think for so many people, when people tell me I'm brave for doing my memoir, or brave for writing this book, I'm not brave. I'm just putting a voice to it. I think
you're being true to yourself. Let's call it what it really is. Like you're being true to yourself.
Absolutely. And if the story resonates with only one person, you've still touched one person's life. And I think that's the power of it. And I think as a writer, you don't, it would be lovely to make money as a writer. And the reality is you don't. At least I don't, because I don't have a big label, but my book is selling and people are reading it. And to me, when they leave feedback or they reach out to me personally that my book has touched them, to me, that's success. And that says that my story was worth putting out there because it impacted somebody else's life in a good way.
Yes. So you have another project you're working on. Let's talk about your next book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this one is a little lighter in tone, but also still talks about a woman in her mid 50s. I feel like my voice is in this women's divorce fiction. Even though I personally am not divorced, I've definitely dealt with those feelings and those emotions and making that decision in my own life. So I feel like I'm comfortable talking about it and having met enough people telling me their stories and sharing. And I think the emotions transcend whether or not you contemplated it or gone through it. But it's called The Scarlet D. And the main character's name is Scarlet, but the D stands for divorcee. And for her, it is really, she's divorced, but she didn't get divorced because her husband was unfaithful. She was. And she has to make the decision of staying in a marriage where a husband is going to constantly question her and wonder what she's doing all the time. And she's like, I can't be that. But she's dealing with the fact that instead of being the woman scorned, she is the woman that's scorned. So it's an opposite label. Because I think that so often women, we're always the victim. And I think the premise of the book is really, we're not always the victim. Sometimes we victimize. Sometimes we're not the good guy. Sometimes we make bad decisions that end in relationships ending. And obviously they always come from a place, and in her place too, she was not in a happy marriage and she strayed, and he couldn't come to terms with that. So she's like, okay, well, I'm going to go live my life. And then it becomes her journey in a new place, making new friends, knowing she joins the divorced women's book club and knowing that they're all going to bicker and moan about how horrible the men were in their lives for cheating on them, for leaving them, for finding another woman. And she's sitting here going, hi, that's me. And so it's a different perspective on trying to find your place in the world of divorced women. And how do you build that when you're wearing a label? And at one point she says, and I'm an alphabet of scarlet letters, right? I'm an adulterer, I'm a bitch, I'm a, divorcee. And you can go on through her whole alphabet of all the labels she can wear, because people are going to judge you when you weren't the victim. But her point is, we're not always the victim. And I think that's so true.
That touches on, you ever heard of the dark shadow? Like, we all have dark shadows. Yeah, that's it. Like, nobody's a saint, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. Sometimes the world learns about our mistakes and then they want to, judge, but like, everybody has a dark shadow. And I think that's a really cool, take on, because there's, women that do cheat and people think it's always the man, but that's not true.
I mean, it's 100% not true. And I think that I hate that women have to be victims. I think that we need to own our place sometimes, and we're not always happy.
Yep.
Going to be okay. And some people are okay if their husband cheats. Some husbands are okay if their wife cheats. And I'm not going to judge anyone, because no one is ever inside anyone's marriage.
Right. Some people have open marriages. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, everyone, like you said, has a dark shadow. And I love, recently someone reached out to me and she goes, your book has a bunch of universal 101s. And she goes, and I'm like, what does that mean? And she's like, well, it means that there are truths for everyone inside the story. Even if the story isn't their story, there are parts that are truths for all of us. They're the 101s of life. And I'm like, oh my God, I love that. Like, every story has a truth, I think, whether it's fiction, especially in fiction, right? There's some deeper meaning. And I think and the Scarlet Divorcee, and the Scarlet D, I think it's really that, we aren't perfect.
And I love that you're touching on not only psychological issues, but also philosophical issues. Because I think that that's just like the icing on the cake. If we can get, well, what is my philosophy in life and what are my values in life and those types of things. It's great to go down the psychological rabbit hole, but I think it comes back to the individual and getting straight with those things for your life.
Yeah. And I don't think every single one of us is supposed to have the same value system. We all have different things that drive us, that motivate us, that define us in our value system. And it's not always the same.
And it can change, and as we change, and so I think grace is another good thing to keep in mind, and being honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself, but also being kind to yourself, as you go down the path of life, because life is hard, life is messy, life can be complicated. It's not always easy. And so I think like grace is a good thing to keep in mind too with, midlife.
And I think that's how I try to approach my writing too, is I give my characters some room to grow and to, they're not perfect. They are absolutely imperfect women. They are they are messed up women, and they're trying to find their place, and they're trying to put those parts and pieces together. And I think maybe that's what resonates, is they're not perfect. They aren't perfect at all. And I'm not perfect. So I think that maybe I'm being me in my books, probably, it's my voice, but we aren't perfect. And I think that's what ultimately the message is we're infallible, right? Or we're not infallible. We screw up, we make mistakes, and we're allowed to do that.
Yep. And it's what you do after the mistakes. Honestly, that's your true character. I think is, how do you handle the mistakes? Is there contrition? Is there, regret? Is there, how do you process them and move forward?
Absolutely. Yes. It's like, do you keep watering the grass, or do you not and let it die? Right. I talk about that too. It's like, if it's already an offshade of brown on the side you're on, does it matter if it's an offshade of brown on the other side too? Right. It's like, if the opposite of the grass is greener, but life is not perfect. And I think that we don't need to have this ideal that life is going to be perfect, but it's as we choose to define it, and we can make it as perfect as it is for us, despite societal norms and stereotypes and naysayers and, people that say, well, you're not allowed to have that. I think I love that we get to keep evolving in our 50s and onward.
Yep. So we're getting here toward the end. Do you have any final thoughts you would like to share with the audience?
I love that I've had this platform and have had the opportunity to talk to you. And I think that really, in the end, I think we need to be true to ourselves, and we need to be true to the women we are, and we need to continue to embrace ourselves as we age and keep going down that path, and being advocates for ourselves and our own happiness, and figuring out what that looks like. I don't think we all know that, but finding the path and taking that path and not being afraid to take the path.
Yes. Well, thank you, Kirsten. I sure do appreciate you coming on my channel today. And everybody, get yourself a copy of this book. I think it's a good tool that you can use if you're trying to save your relationship or your marriage, or just to get more insight to maybe how you're feeling. You've got some very valuable lessons and tools in here.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. This was fun.
Yes. And if you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be alerted to when the next video drops. Thanks for watching.